Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar. My name is McKay Allen. I'm the Inbound Marketing Manager at Log My Calls, and we're really excited you're here today. The title of today's webinar is Creating a Call to Action That Matters. And our special guest is Lois Brayfield. She is the CEO of J.Schmid, based in Kansas City. We'll introduce her more in a moment. First, a couple of quick house cleaning items, if you will. First, this webinar is being recorded, so we encourage you to pay attention, but this recording will be shared with you later, tomorrow morning actually, in an email. And so we encourage you to share this recording via social media and within your organization and listen to it again, take notes, etc. So again, you will get this recorded webinar tomorrow morning in an email. Next, please ask questions. Some of the best information we find is disseminated in the question and answer period after the presentation. So Lois's presentation will probably last 30-35 minutes, and then after that we'll probably have about 15 minutes left for questions. So we encourage you to ask those. Just type those into the little question bar on your GoToWebinar screen panel thing there, and I will read those to Lois at the conclusion of her presentation. A couple of other items that people ask questions about generally. First, who is Log My Calls? What do we do? Why do you do these webinars? So Log My Calls is a call tracking and analytics tool. So what that means is we work with marketers, whether they be agencies, publishers, or small businesses, large enterprises. We do two things. We track which campaigns, ads, and keywords are generating phone calls. So we can tell you, okay, your PPC efforts generate this many phone calls, your organic efforts generate this many phone calls down to the keyword level. And then additionally, we track what happens on the call. So we can actually tell marketers which efforts are producing new appointments, are producing purchases, are producing missed opportunities that could be followed up on in the future, which avenues are producing good leads versus bad leads. So there's a ton of stuff we can actually extract from the call itself. Now then the next question is, why do you do these webinars? Well, our audience consists of marketers. And so we wanted to provide very useful marketing information. And so we host this webinar series. We've done about 85, 90 webinars in probably the last 14, 15 months. So you can see some of the webinars we've done recently. You can watch our past webinars in this webinar library, logmycalls.com/webinar-series. And you can come here and just watch our past webinars without any sort of form fill, and then register for upcoming webinars. Do you want to announce our webinar next week is by the guys at Main Street ROI, and it is entitled How to Track All of Your Marketing Results. They're going to get very in-depth into analytics tools, into heat mapping tools, into ways that you can determine what works for your marketing. So we're excited for that webinar. Now today, as I said, we have a very special guest, Lois Brayfield. She is with J.Schmid. They are based in Kansas City. And she was telling me a moment ago, they describe themselves as a boutique direct marketing firm. I'll let her explain a little bit more about what that means. But in terms of her bio, she's worked with some of the country's leading companies. So we're talking with people like Hallmark, American Express, Sprint, IKEA, Brookstone, Sears, tons of companies that you and I deal with every day. She has worked with and helped them improve their marketing. She's also been recognized repeatedly as Kansas City's Direct Marketer of the Year. And has received more awards than I've probably applied for in my life, which is pretty good. So we're really excited that she's agreed to take time out of her busy schedule to join us today. I know she travels a lot, and so I know that trying to carve time out of a schedule to do something like this when you're on a plane a lot is challenging. So we're excited you're here, Lois. Let me give you control of the screen, and you can correct any mistakes I made in your introduction.
Great. Thank you so much for that warm invitation or introduction, McKay. I really, truly appreciate it. And I'm honored to be a part of the Log My Calls webinar series, truly honored. As he said, we are a boutique direct marketing agency, and I won't do a long commercial, just to say that our core competencies really are building strategies, direct marketing strategies. We're big into the area of branding, or sometimes that's a whole refresh or a do-over. We specialize in design and then also analytics. So enough with the commercial. So again, thank you for allowing me to talk about this important topic, creating a call to action that matters. And I say this because sometimes we forget the basics. With marketing, that's changed so much in the last 5 years or even 10 years, we have to make sure that, our marketing efforts are really still relevant. And things that worked 10 years ago don't necessarily work today. And that's what we're really trying to seek, isn't it? The holy grail of the perfect marketing message. And I saw this, this diagram from a stock analyst that actually predicted the death of many industries. And in fact, he claims that they have basically died. Now, I will say that yes, the record industry has died, but we still listen to music. Just like the telephone, landline is dying, but we still talk on the phones. We still read books. We just do it differently. And that's where we've come today with marketing. And, trying to figure out this new norm can be absolutely overwhelming. And we're bombarded with all these messages that brands are floating out there. And the idea is to just get laser focused so that our customers can cut through all the clutter. And as technology advances, it's going to get harder. It's not going to get easier. So all the more reason that we understand how to craft that perfect message that just cuts through the clutter. Otherwise, what's going to happen is we are literally going to blow the mind of our customer to the point where they're going to say enough. They're going to put up their hand, and we're not going to see them. They're not going to listen to what we have to say. And the recent trend that I've been seeing, and so many people have fallen victim to this, that simple call to action to say, like us, follow us, call us, visit us. And it's actually a very arrogant approach to marketing. We're just saying, we love us, and, you're going to love us as much as we love us. So just like us. And that's not a strong call to action. In fact, what the customer is really hearing from us is just a bunch of words, blah, blah, blah. It has no relevance to what they're seeking. And there's a formula out there. If you remember one formula alone, I'm going to share it with you. And this is a formula that many, many brands need to be paying attention to. And that one thing is to basically just stop it. And I know I'm saying that tongue-in-cheek, but sort of. Instead, what really requires is just a really laser-focused strategy. And at the end of the day, that's what many brands have forgotten about. What's the strategy to get the customer from point A to point B, to get them to buy products? So before I get started, though, I want to just, define what is a call to action. What do you mean by this? It's basically asking your customers to do anything, preferably right now. But we've learned in the last 5 years that's not always what's going to happen. And it used to be fairly darn easy. It was just 3 things we asked them to do: pick up the phone, mail something in, or go to the store. We didn't have that whole web thing. And in the last 15 years, it's gotten so much more complicated with literally hundreds of tactics that we could use. So it becomes very, very important that we strategically think about that call to action. And what I'm going to do today is basically walk you through 5 things to think about, from being customer-focused to your one thing, how to get customers on first base, how you can get a laser-focused message out there, and then something that you may not have ever considered before, and that's what I'm calling a brand campaign. So let's get started. And if you hear a pregnant pause, that's only because I'm going to take a sip of water, okay? I haven't left you. So number 1, customer focus, keeping it customer focused. Never, ever assume that they still like you. They may have ordered from you before. They may have purchased your product or service, but that doesn't mean that they're not being bombarded by your competitors or other things to take the place of your brand. We know that the Holy Grail is to stay top of mind, but in order to do that, it's really critical that we understand them. And unfortunately, people are beginning to unlike brands. In this particular research study, it said that the reason people are unliking brands on Facebook, 44% said the company posted too frequently. And look at the third one. This is very scary. 38% said they're unliking Facebook because the content is repetitive and boring. When you go over to Twitter, it's even worse. 52% said that they stopped following brands on Twitter because the content was repetitive and boring. That's pretty scary. And I found this next statistic to be pretty eye-opening from the IBM Institute for Business Value. They said that 60 to 65% of business leaders, they believe that consumers followed them on social because they wanted to be a part of the community. That's not the case. And in fact, the research said only 15 to 20% of consumers agreed. And that's pretty scary. In fact, the number one reason is just to get a deal. That's why people, liked people on Facebook or engaged. They wanted the deal, and that does not necessarily translate into customer loyalty. So the first question, in order to keep a customer focus, is do you really truly know what your customer cares about? And that requires three things. And if you're not doing these three things, then you really truly don't know your customer. And those three things are research, research, and research. And I know I'm trying to be funny, but I cannot stress this enough. If you're not regularly engaging in some sort of research, at least on a quarterly basis, to understand the heart of your consumer, then you are missing a big, big opportunity. As direct marketers, and I know most of you are, recently our big research was, did they buy or not? And we knew those best practices on how to create calls to action and get people to raise their hands. Well, now we know we have access to the consumer's heart. We can learn more about them. And if you're not doing this, I just strongly recommend that you begin tomorrow. And there's so many different ways that you can engage people in research. And the most effective, cost-effective is just basically online research that is so affordable to do. You can also do focus groups online. You can engage customer advocates that will regularly tell you what's going on. One-on-one interviews are powerful, especially in the B2B world. You can listen in on phone calls to see the kind of words that they use, to describe your brand or to describe, the solution to the problem that they have. Reading customer reviews can give you great insight. And one of my favorites is psychographic overlays, where you truly learn the emotional connection that people have with your brand, or understand their likes and dislikes. One of the most powerful techniques is to build customer personas. Here's an example of one of our clients who has a primary, secondary, and a tertiary persona that they've built. And this was done with their database being overlaid with some psychographic information. And you can see down in the left-hand corner, the demographics of Jerry. And most of us are pretty good about knowing those. But what's more important is understanding who he is, what he wants, and how to say it. What's important to him and what we need to avoid to this profile. Another one is David. That's their customer profile too. They define him as being rock steady. And again, the psychographic details. And it's such a powerful tool, especially for your marketing team. If they really truly understand the heart, then they can create messages that really truly matter. I'll give you a couple of case studies. I have several throughout there, but this one in particular is a brand that sells, a B2B brand that sells custom-made and really cool hand drilling systems. And they sell them to contractors and to architects. And typically their marketing dollars have been spent with magazine ads, industry catalogs, their own catalog, a newsletter, mostly in print. And they've been doing this for years, even though they had a web presence. And through some research, they actually did one-on-one interviews with architects across the country. And one thing kept coming up over and over and over again. This architect, he was saying, give me ideas. To help me in my job, I have to be unique. I have to be different than my competitors. So give me ideas. Well, as you can imagine, this completely changed their marketing efforts. And they began to build content that centered on what the architect wanted, and that was ideas. So immediately they saw a lift in response, and in fact, they were able to save over $160,000 the first year in their marketing, not focusing so much on print, but content, and they were able to increase sales by 18%. It was huge, but they wouldn't have gotten there had they not done the homework. Okay, number 2, your one thing, and this is critical, and this is more under the umbrella of brand, but it's important to touch on just because a call to action should kind of sit under that messaging, that brand messaging. So your one thing, what I mean by that is as marketers, oftentimes we try and shove too many things down the customer's throat. In this case, I have an arrow. Instead of getting to the point of the arrow, we end up talking about a lot of stuff. You know, the fact that we have free delivery and lifetime guarantee, and, you know, the feathers are a rare ostrich, and, you know, the special titanium point, and it comes with a free, you know, quiver, all these things, and it's just going on and on and on. And to the customer, it's a bunch of white noise, when actually the things that they remember is the things that you say over and over again. That one thing that you can own, which will resonate and they'll remember, instead of the 10 other things that you want to say. But, you know, and it's a lot of hard work. That's a whole different webinar, but getting to that one thing that you can own that nobody else can. And the reality of it is, you know, through neuromarketing, we've been able to prove that our brains are literally hardwired to notice what's unique and what's different. That's what the eye gravitates toward, and the mind as well. So I'll give you an example in the category of luxury sedans, because I think they do it so well. Here are 4 brands that virtually compete with each other, but each one of them owns one thing. And you probably knew it without even knowing it, what those things were. You know, Lexus, it focuses on luxury. Mercedes, that German engineering, the quality, you know, piece of it. BMW does a masterful job. You know, the ultimate driving machine. We're all about performance. If you love to drive, we're the ones that can deliver performance. And then Volvo, of course, you know, you just say what they own. If I asked you, if this was an interactive webinar, you know, most of you would shout out safety right away. That's what they own. Now, it's not to say that Lexus isn't a safe car or quality made or delivers performance, but they've chosen to focus on this one thing. And it makes it so much easier for the customer to cut through the clutter and you know, be attracted to that one thing. And it's hard. It's hard. I'm not saying it's very easy. It is difficult. But, you know, for the customer, it's even harder. It's harder for them to cut through all that clutter. So we have to keep it simple. It's so critical that we make it easy for them to cut through all that clutter. Another piece of research that really was an eye-opener to me was in the Harvard Business Review. And in it, they surveyed 7,000 consumers, and they said the #1 reason for brand stickiness by far was what they called decision simplicity. It's basically simplifying that decision-making process, so much so that consumers actually think less about their decision. And it goes under that category of just keeping it simple. And so your call to action must also be very simple. So understanding what's the easiest way to get the customer from point A to point B is very critical in your marketing efforts. And I strongly encourage you to literally build a hierarchy. Where do you want them to go so that they can get the question or the answers to their question that they have? Where should they go first, second, third? In this scenario, I've just kind of visually made one bigger than the other. And you may find that sending them to some of the social sites may not be a good idea at all, and you may want to get rid of them. I think it's okay as long as you have a strategy that gets them, you know, to say yes eventually. Okay, number 3, first base, getting a customer on first base. And I love to share stories, so I'm going to share one that I learned while watching the movie Moneyball. And if you haven't seen it, It's a great movie that carries with it an analogy for branding and marketing. Just some powerful messages in there. And if you're familiar with the movie, you recall a scene in there where Billy Beane, who's the manager of the Oakland A's, coming off a really bad season, they're in their recruiting mode, and they're sitting around a conference room table, and everybody wants to, recruit the big dog, the big home run hitter. And Billy, in his frustration, is saying, no, that's not what we're trying to do. And he points to their analyst, it's Jonah Hill, and he says, what are we really trying to do? And he's trying to get them to see what they're basically trying to do is win the pennant. That's the analogy of getting the sale. But in order to get the pennant, they have to get wins. In order to get wins, they have to get runs. But in order to get runs, they have to get people on first base. So the analogy is, what do you do that gets customers to raise their hands, get them engaged, and get them in that buying cycle, getting them to first base? And so I ask you, what is the most effective way to get prospects on first base for your brand? And what works for your brand isn't necessarily going to work for other brands or for your customer. And this is supported by another piece of research that McKinsey put out a couple of years ago that has haunted me ever since. Because as direct marketers, we want them to buy right away. We rent names, and if those names don't buy, then we consider it a loss. We only grade a direct mail campaign is in how many things they bought. All right? So this stat says that prospects who engage with brands on a meaningful level are 68% more likely to purchase in the future. That's pretty huge. But in order to do that, they have to engage on a meaningful level. And meaningful means something to other people. So I want to share a couple of case studies. One of them is from a brand called BSW, and they sell broadcasting equipment supplies to sound studios and radio stations. And an astute marketer pointed to a stat that said if they were able to get a quote, their salespeople could convert them at a very, very high rate. So it was determined that getting people on first base is just get them to do a quote, just get them to fill out a quote. So that changed their calls to action. It changed a lot of their marketing efforts into things like call or email us with your quote today. In fact, in one of their flyers, they literally crossed out the price of this processor, which was $14,000, and instead just said, call us for the lowest price to get them to that quote stage. And even when you looked at their online efforts, they made a big deal about it, kind of having fun with it even. But if you'll notice that red button that literally said get a quote, and then even on the product page, instead of adding a product to the cart, they even have a quote cart that they could immediately get a quote instead of going through the purchase process, which they probably weren't ready to do right away anyway. But the result of this was huge. They immediately saw a 30% increase in their quote inventory. And now they have the problem of trying to convert that because they received almost too many quotes, and they're having a hard time following up on them. But it's a hugely successful program and something they're working through. So getting on customer base, the question that I have is, are you giving customers an exciting or compelling reason to interact or engage on a different level? But even more importantly that, I'm going to go to second base. Are you offering a secondary call to action that once you've got them there, they have a call to action that gets them even closer to that sale, hopefully immediately. Another case study is one called Relax the Back. For them, the goal is to get the customer into the store. They know that if they can get them into the store and try the products out, assess what their back problems are, they know that the chance for getting a sale grows exponentially. So in their marketing efforts, they say that over and over again in different ways under the category or under the banner of Explore Our Store for More. So for them, they promise a free pain assessment, and they even give a QR code that helps them find the store closest to them, always reminding them of that free pain assessment. Another tactic that's worked really well for them is a QR code that promises, 3 tips to a pain-free day at the office. This is a category. These are problems that their customers have, so they're offering them solutions. Once they go on, and this is the problem I have with most QR codes, it engages, it promises engagement, but it's not content that people really care about. And further, they don't have that secondary call to action that moves them down that sell cycle. So in this case, you can see they have a promise, a solution video, delivering what they promised, but then followed up with a coupon and even a locator map, all, and that secondary call to action being, come in and try these solutions and then enjoy the 20% off. So again, a secondary call to action. Here's another case study that was just unbelievable. I could not believe how well it worked. And unfortunately, I can't tell you who the brand is, but I can tell you that they're in the gardening category. And through research, they discovered that their customers were a bit confused by the new growing zones. Our climate changes have created nuances on when people should grow different things. So through some content, they developed not a white paper, but a green paper that shared information about this challenge that their customers were having. And through the use of direct mail, social efforts, and search efforts, they provided this free content that allowed people to, and it pushed people to their website to go online and sign up for this free relevant guide. And all the customer had to do was put in their email address and their zip code so that they could get the green paper that was relevant to them. Then, through a triggered email, they were sent this data, this green paper with a welcome message, and then followed up with a series of triggered emails that gave geo-specific offers, highly, highly personalized. And the result of it was nothing short of amazing. They were typically getting about just under a 1% response rate, and they were able to get an additional almost 2%, 1.8, to raise their hand, even though they didn't buy. They went online and left information behind because they were willing to get this important information, and then through triggered emails were able to convert almost a third of them. And the cool thing is they didn't have to buy that name again because the customer, raised their hand. Okay, so we've talked about being customer-focused, your one thing, getting customers on first base, and now the message, actually crafting that message, which truly is an art. The question is, how can you ask customers, can make or break your marketing goals, literally. I'm going to give you 4 thoughts, and I'll run through them fairly quickly. First of all, customer-focused. And I don't know how many times we've seen this, and I'm pretty amused by it, where you're just saying, follow us online. It's a very arrogant thing to do. Pottery Barn, I saw this one, and I thought it was pretty good. They actually gave them a reason, to connect with them. If you're looking for decorating ideas or design tools, or to connect with other fans. But what if we twist these words around just a bit and make it about the consumer, or about them, not us? So in rewriting it, it should work better to say, discover your design style. Find decorating ideas, entertaining tips, or find help for your next project. Then follow us. Give them a real reason. Make it about them and the things that you can provide that solve their problems. One of my favorite acronyms, I can't take credit for it. I stole it from Tony Shea from the Zappos. I love this acronym, and what it stands for is interesting, compelling, engaging, and entertaining. And it acts as a great filter that your calls to action or your marketing needs to be interesting and compelling, engaging, and entertaining to your customer. Again, customer-focused. And the only way to find those things out is, again, going back to research. But if it's not, don't do it. It's just noise to them. And also be very, very careful that you don't focus on what I call the cost of entry benefits, things like great customer service or 100% satisfaction guaranteed. Those things are expected. They are cost of entry benefits. They're not differentiating enough and won't grab attention. Okay, second, be specific. And one of my favorite things to do is actually tell them what to do by leading with a verb. Now, you can see how leading with a verb can make all the difference in the world. Here, we're just making a statement. You know, it's Volkswagen Passat, 2012 Motor Trend Car of the Year. Okay, that's nice. But the invitation to drive it can make all the difference. So be specific with exactly what you want them to do, and leading with the verbs will help you get there a lot quicker. Third, be clear and concise. The statement is a true fact. When you write more than 14 words in a sentence, your reader's comprehension drops below 90%. That's huge, my friends. It always can be said in a more clear and concise way, as it is in that second example. The first one is 17 words. The second one is just getting rid of 4 words, and the difference is amazing. It's easier to read, easier to comprehend. And I find many, many marketers just going crazy trying to sound smart or trying to go into too much detail, especially in the beginning. This group of words, again, I'm trying to be funny, but basically it's just saying twinkle, twinkle, little star. Now, which one will the eye gravitate toward? Obviously, we're not a nation of readers, so being too verbose is not smart marketing. And lastly, be authentic. Understand the personality of your brand and embrace that personality to a degree where it's just what I call very transparent. And transparency just means free from pretense or deceit, easily detected or seen through, readily understood, visibility. And it's so critical that we are transparent with our brands. Now, some brands, if we were to rewrite their taglines, maybe it'd be a little bit too transparent. I saw this group of taglines that I thought were highly amusing. I especially liked LinkedIn, connect with people for no reason at all. We're all scratching our heads on that. We feel like we have to participate, but we're not sure why. And then my all-time favorite, which is NyQuil, slip into a nice coma for a few hours. Now, that's very, very authentic. And, sometimes being that authentic will get noticed. So it's not altogether a bad thing. A brand that I'm watching here of recent is J.L. Powell, because I think they do an incredible job. It's a lifestyle brand for men that aspire to be outdoors, basically. And they have taken authenticity to a new level. Instead of just showing these models all posed and modelly, if that's a word, they show them outdoors. And I love it because they dare to show their audience smoking a cigar. Who does that? Or drinking what looks like could be a beer. Or their 1,000-mile boot, instead of having it all pristine and staged and propped, shows mud on it. That's authenticity. And customers appreciate that kind of transparency. And their copy is just incredibly authentic. They're talking about the cargo pant, and I'll just read a bit of this. Once again, we endeavor to rescue the cargo from its abject humiliation as a staple of Casual Friday. Our cargo pant, you see, is designed for activities considerably more arduous than a marathon slide presentation in a climate-controlled conference room, which is what we're doing now. But my point is that, you can dare to take those kind of risks if you truly understand your brand, and your calls to action can be so much more flavorful if you really know the heart of your customer. Okay, number 5, build a campaign. And this is kind of, as direct marketers, we've typically not thought in these terms. And I don't mean a mail campaign. I mean a brand campaign that can captivate your audience. I basically describe it as a strategic but true customer value, which can be articulated in customer loyalty, that kind of excitement can grow exponentially if you overfill performance expectations, or what I refer to as creating wow for your customers. That's when extreme loyalty occurs, when you can surprise, thrill, and captivate. A perfect example of this, I'm going to share a couple, is Dove. About 9 or 10 years ago, they began running the Real Beauty campaign. And they understand their one thing that they sell is all about beauty. And they're going to set about, to help their customers redefine what beauty is. And they've done an incredible, emotive job of doing this. If you haven't seen their recent campaigns, it's doing the same thing as they were trying 9 years ago. It's redefining beauty. But their most recent ones, the Sketch Artist campaign, I won't go into the details of it, and then their new one, the Selfie, you might Google them and just take a look at how they're working a brand campaign with the goal of that being the call to action to get people to pay attention to their brand and getting them on first base. In the direct category, a great example of this is LL Bean. Some really smart marketer discovered or put together that they were having their 100th year anniversary, as was Fenway Park. And so what they did, they became the rain delay tarp sponsor, and they upcycled that rain tarp into their iconic bag. And they were able to cut it up and create 2012 of these bags, the same year as the 100th anniversary. And they promoted this event heavily through social and through their catalog, through their website, that they were going to be offering this bag on a certain day. That was the call to action. And it was an amazing campaign, and literally these bags sold out in 5 minutes. But even more importantly were the thousands of people that were intrigued by this and wowed by it, that went online and left their email or signed up for something or even purchased another product. Another brand that I love to watch because not only their authenticity, but their clever campaigns. This was more of a product campaign. And during our own presidential election, they had a campaign of their own. And it was between, you got to vote for which pair of their underwear that you liked the best, their buck naked or their free range. And all of their marketing efforts across many channels, they promoted this campaign. And if you went online, you could literally vote for your favorite. But what I thought was just fascinating about this is they always accompanied the call to action with an offer. Everywhere you saw it, you saw that you could also buy two and save. Now, in the lower part of this slide, you'll see that once you voted, it told you what the results of the campaign were and reminded you that you could buy two and save. So again, they had that secondary call to action. Very clever. So customer excitement literally can create value. Customers are willing to pay more. Brands are more memorable. You get that viral activity that you really want. But most importantly, that increased loyalty, which is so, so important. But it requires risk. It requires thinking things in a new way. And in this crowded marketplace, risk is not an option. I had the pleasure of hearing the CEO of Moose Jaw talk about risk-taking. And if you're not familiar with that brand, or if you are familiar with that brand, you know that they do a lot of out-of-the-box things. And the CEO admitted that about 4 out of 5 of the campaigns or events that they take risks on, only one of them will take. That one is worth it because they grow exponentially afterwards. So I leave you with one more thought. I love this quote. The secret in advertising is respecting the consumer. You are interrupting their life, and really advertising is unwanted. So if you're going to crash the party, bring some champagne. I want to thank you very much. Hopefully you'll take away a few ideas. I also want to thank McKay once again and Log My Calls. I really appreciate it. And I believe this is the time that we're going to ask questions. So McKay, did anybody have any questions?
Yeah, there's a few questions flowing in actually, and everybody keep those questions coming. Just type them into the question bar on your GoToWebinar screen there, and I'll relay those questions to Lois. So one of the questions that we're getting a little bit here is about simple call to actions and simplicity. An anecdote before I ask you the question. I mean, we've noticed the same thing, that the more complex we try to get, the worse things seem to get in terms of conversion rates, whether they be on landing pages or how well people respond to marketing messages generally. And this can be everything from fewer words in a title to simple images. I mean, where do you think this simplicity should manifest itself in our marketing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Visually first. A lot of images, as the one slide I showed you, that people are attracted to one thing rather than a lot of things. So visually, your call to action needs to be very simple. People, we're a visual nation, unfortunately, not necessarily. We do read copy if it's visual in nature. So keeping simple visual things and then asking them only to do one thing rather than several, and again, the fewer words, the better. There's also, we see this trend, and we've tested this, that this design aesthetics also play a big part of it. There's kind of a new trend toward a real clean, uncluttered look, and we've done head-to-head tests, and people are drawn to that clean and simple look. And I'm not saying white space sells necessarily. We want to take good advantage of the space, but keeping it clean, keeping it simple can make a big difference. And again, the fewer words, the better. And if your offer is very complicated, maybe just focus on what the end benefit is, and then get into the details later after you've piqued their interest. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, that does. I totally agree. I think it's first in the visual, and I think we're seeing this with how sites are being designed more.
Yes.
There's a lot more white space than there used to be. There's fewer words generally, and I think we've even seen it. We've tested like email subject lines, and fewer words always wins. Like always, it's incredible. So yeah, totally agree.
And as far as the visual, don't use visuals just for the sake of using visuals, but if you can be on brand but also convey emotion, you're seeing it. All the commercials, even on TV, that we're drawn to are the ones that are emotive, that draw on our emotions. Hallmark cards knew this for years. I think it's just now the rest of us are catching up on it.
Yeah, I think that's right. I totally agree there. You also talked a lot, excuse me. You also talked a little bit towards the end about how being what was the way you put it? Being real or authentic was the word you used. How can, the simple example is, like you said, the boot company that shows their boots with mud on them and things, but how can, give examples if you can, Lois, of maybe people in other sectors. How can they appear authentic if you are a small business owner, or if you're a marketing manager at a technology company or a larger retailer? How do you appear authentic? What are the little things you can do?
Yeah, good question. Especially B2B, I think there's such a tendency to not offend people to the point where we've all become vanilla. And if your brand is a fun brand, and sometimes it culminates from the ownership, why not be tongue-in-cheek with your marketing messages? A good example was at Duluth Trading. They dared to use the word butt crack. Now, that's not going to work with all brands, but especially in B2B brands, I think a great example is New Pig, who, their spokesperson is a pig, and they call their customers oinkers. And in a recent campaign, they literally gave away pig noses that their customers would take pictures, of the nose, of the pig nose on their face, and would send it in. And, it's really kind of creating a different kind of community, but being authentic to yourself. And if you know any of the people at New Pig, you know that they have a lot of fun. If you're the smart brand, then you've got to prove it out by giving smarter solutions or smarter content. But being more authentic, and again, so many people become vanilla because they're afraid to be authentic. And it's the authentic brands out there that are really, growing exponentially. And I'll also say that it's really wrapping your brand up in a story. A good example of this, some of the ugliest shoes I've ever seen, is Tom's shoes. But because they've been able to be authentic with a story, and in this case it's being a philanthropist, look how fast they grew. So there's so many different ways to be authentic. Patagonia is another one. Even though their customers don't, ice climb, it's an aspirational brand, and they'll show pictures of that. So there's lots of examples out there, but I think it begins with first really understanding the heart of your brand, the one thing that you own, and what that higher order benefit is. What's the emotional takeaway?
That makes a lot of sense. And then finally, our last question today, as far as I don't want to say action items because that's such a buzzword, but if someone wants to improve their call to action, what would you say is the one takeaway you want people to leave with today? Is it to make it more simple? Is it to be authentic? I know it's all of these things, but crystallize it. If someone says, look, I'm going to improve this one thing from today's webinar, what would that thing be, Lois?
I think, oh boy, it's going to be a multi-part answer here. I think first, understanding your customer, understanding the words, the solutions they're looking for, the kind of, how they want to be engaged and where they want to be engaged, so you can craft that perfect message that really resonates with them. But second to that, and as equally as important, is to understand the strategy. We can come up with 100 different things that we want the customer to do, but build that strategy that says, okay, ultimately we want them to buy X. But to get there, we're going to get them to raise their hand by doing this, and then we're going to build calls to action that resonate with them, that are simple, clear, and concise. So it's really that strategy, and it's thinking outside the box, not just relying on the status quo. This is what we've always done, because I believe there's always a better way, but you have to think it through strategically, and it doesn't always include Facebook. But you have to think through that strategy. And so I think that's the answer. Build a strategy.
I think that's awesome. And to your point, I think sometimes it's just so simple to focus on very easy marketing tactics like Facebook. Mm-hmm. And it has to be based on research. I think you said that at the outset, that you have to base all of this on research and testing. So that's great. Lois, thanks for your time today. We appreciate you taking the time. Like I said, I know you're busy. And it was a great webinar. So everybody, thanks for attending. We'll make this recording available to you tomorrow morning. You'll get an email that has the recording attached to it. Actually, it'll be a link in the email, so it won't be attached. So yeah, any final words before we close, Lois?
Nope. I just want to thank you again, McKay, for inviting me, and thank you, everybody, for listening in. I know we're all busy marketers, so it is a sacrifice to sit in, and I truly appreciate that and value it.
Great. Well, thank you for taking the time. We really appreciate it. So everybody have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful rest of the week. And as I said, next week we're having another webinar about analytics, specifically web analytics, phone analytics, mobile analytics. It'll be everything you want to know about measurements. So thanks again, everyone, and thank you, Lois. We appreciate it.
Thank you.